Hi. So for this video, I'm going to be talking about Anne Washburn's play 10 out of 12. Like Mr. Burns' A Post-Electric play, which is the other Anne Washburn play that I've done a video on, which I'll link up in the corner. That corner, I think. You should be seeing it now. 10 out of 12 is a deeply meta-theatrical play. I had a somewhat weird experience of reading this play because for about, I'd say 92% of it, I wasn't really that interested in the play. But for some reason I just sort of felt, all right, you know what, I should keep going with this. And I was tempted to put it down and just sort of say, this is one of those theater people being self-indulgent kind of plays, which does happen, because what this play 10 out of 12 is basically the tech rehearsal for a production. So we have the director, the assistant director, we have the stage manager, we have lighting people, sound people, tech people, costumes, and then a handful of actors. And almost all of the focus for the play is on directorial decisions, is on lighting cues and sound cues. There's so much time here that's just spent on them adjusting lighting and sound, them giving lighting and sound cues. Like, it's so over the top in terms of, but it's also not. Like, it's the real process of making theater, but it's because it's condensed in this way. What would normally be developed over a number of rehearsals and planning periods and things like that gets condensed into a 2-hour play or whatever it is, 100 pages or so. So for the most part, it's just this sort of meta-theatrical experiment where the play that we're seeing is the process of creating theater presented artistically, and that's fine. It's okay, but it wasn't really grabbing me until this is, I don't even know which, scene 13, which so in this version, and this is not necessarily going to be that useful a reference for anyone reading a different version, but the play starts on page 239 and ends on page 340. This is the bottom of page 327. So almost all of the way through the play. And there was this scene that just, and it was there. Like, I got what this play was doing and why it was brilliant enough that we should really appreciate it. So this is a pretty lengthy bit here, but I think it's important, and I think it's brilliant. So one of the actors, who seems like this sort of veteran guy who's sort of come up through shitty experimental theaters and like no budget, rehearsing all night and then working during the day and then rehearsing again, or opening the show kind of theaters. He proposes to the director that they could expand this scene, that they could improvise for the moment, and the playwright, who's not actually in this play, could then sort of take what they've done in their improvisations and maybe build on that for 3 or 4 pages or so. And for those of you who don't know, 3 or 4 pages for a play script is a fairly long edition. And so the director says, Paul, this is tech. And for those of you who don't know how theater rehearsals work, tech is pretty close to a full-blown production. Like, things are supposed to more or less be in place. So the idea of rewriting the script is actually a major, major thing to do. And Paul says, I know it is. We don't have the time, we don't have the strength, but this ship is foundering. Do we allow ourselves to sink and to drown only because the effort appears too great? Yes, it is a terrifying idea. This is supposed to be the home stretch, and I don't propose it lightly, and I know the risk, and I know we risk damage, insuperable damage to the production, and believe me, that thought fills me with terror too. But I'm even more terrified at the damage to my soul, to all of our souls, to the souls of the audience, which will give itself trustingly to us. Do we face their need with cynicism? Do we shrink away from this moment, this pivotal moment, and the very real bravery required to face the situation for what it is, and more than to face it, to change it? Change it? What I'm proposing is difficult, I know that. So difficult, but it is not impossible. Are we going to let the real opportunity of completing this endeavor in a satisfactory fashion slip away only because we are exhausted? Only because we are afraid? How will we live with ourselves if we bring something into the world which isn't good enough? We're not being paid enough to do shoddy work. So we have in this moment this beautiful, brilliant encapsulation of an artistic philosophy. And then Ben, the other actor on stage in this scene, responds. He says, Paul, I don't think anything we do will ever be good enough. Isn't that the condition of the theater? Or if you're going to get general life, it's too hard, it's too complex, it's too much of a task. It's going to always lack. There will always be a kind of failure. We have to find a beauty in that to stay sane. And I don't think Charles, that's the character, has the strength to know himself and continue on. I don't know, but he has to go through with the other half of the play, so... And then Paul finally says, let's continue. Let's continue. So there we have, in these 2 amazing speeches, these competing artistic philosophies, even competing life philosophies in a way. This idea of we need to sacrifice and we need to challenge ourselves and we need to take on the task that seemed impossible because it would be unacceptable not to. It would be detrimental not to, on the one hand. But we've also got this realistic, maybe cynical recognition that no matter how great the task is, even in a way no matter how small the task is, there will always be failure, and that the challenge is not to overcome the impossible. The challenge is to find the value of the failure, to accept that failure, to accept that inadequacy, and to continue on, to make the art regardless of the fact that you won't succeed, you won't be perfect, but there will always be that failure. And I don't know that Washburn comes down on one side or the other of these two positions. I think in a way, from the little bit I've read of her work, and I know very little about her as a person, but from what I've seen, I think she embraces both. She doesn't see these as opposed philosophies. She sees these as inherently interconnected, that we have to strive to do the impossible thing, and we have to find the beauty of not succeeding in doing it. And we have to continue striving anyway.